the chamber doors sealed with a hiss that sounded, to Ambassador Rel Kazavan of the Threnid Assembly, almost like a held breath finally released. He watched through the transparent panel as the human delegation folded their data slates, rose from their seats, and walked a Euros calmly, without a single backward glance, a Euros, toward the exit of the Grand Council Hall. Behind them, the laughter was still echoing. 3 minutes ago, that laughter had filled the chamber like a flood. 900 delegates from 41 species, and every single one of them had erupted when the human ambassador, a quiet woman named Dr. Elena Voss, stood up and said the words, "Humanity withdraws its application for permanent council membership, effective immediately." They thought it was a bluff, a tantrum, a species too proud to admit defeat after being ranked dead last in the council's species. Viability index a Euros, technologically primitive, militarily insignificant, culturally unrefined. Rel had laughed too. Everyone had. But now, watching the human delegation's shuttle detach from the docking spire and vanish into the black, Rel felt something cold settle into his chest. Because Elena Voss had said one more thing before she walked out, and nobody in that chamber had understood it yet. She'd said, "You'll want to keep our comm frequency open. You're going to need it sooner than you think." None of this had begun that way, though. 3 years earlier, it had begun with a request to Euros, and a warning nobody heeded. Humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council hadn't come through conquest or discovery. It had come through an invitation, delivered by a scout drone of the Yulthurai Concord, found drifting near Neptune's orbit. The message inside was simple: your species has been observed. You may petition for provisional membership in the Council of Civilized Worlds. Earth said yes. Of course they said yes. What choice did a single, fractured planet have when the alternative was isolation in a galaxy already carved up between 40 other spacefaring peoples? Dr. Elena Voss, former xenolinguist and reluctant diplomat, led the delegation. She was not chosen because she was the most powerful voice in human politics. She was chosen because she was the calmest a Euros, and because she had spent a decade studying not human languages, but the patterns in how the Council's own transmissions were structured. She noticed things others missed. The provisional period lasted 3 years. Humanity attended committee sessions, submitted technological demonstrations, answered endless questionnaires about civilizational maturity. They were assigned observers a Euros polite, condescending Vakaru diplomats, who took notes like scientists studying a curious but limited species. And every year, the species viability index ranked Earth lower, not because humanity was weak, because the index didn't measure what humanity had. It measured warp drive efficiency, planetary defense grids, standardized diplomatic protocol compliance a Euros categories, written by species who had been in space for thousands of years, measuring a species that had been in space for 60. Elena understood this. What she didn't understand yet, a Euro not fully a Euro, was why the index was built that way. That answer came from an unlikely source, a young Threnid data clerk named Ivo Sen, who slipped Elena an unmarked data crystal during a reception nobody else noticed leaving early. "Don't trust the index," he whispered. "It isn't measuring worth. It's measuring submission." The rehook came fast, and it changed everything. The crystal contained decades of internal council memos a Euros, the kind never meant for outside eyes. What Elena found inside made her hands go cold. The species viability index wasn't a neutral measurement. It was a filtering system, quietly designed by the Council's founding powers a Euro, the Threnid, the Vakaru, and the Olkari a Euro, to keep newly discovered species dependent on Council technology and Council goodwill for as long as possible. Full membership came with voting rights, trade autonomy, and military parity protections. Provisional status came with none of that Euro, only obligations, tariffs, and one particularly cruel clause. Any species ranked below a certain threshold could have their homeworld's orbital shipping lanes administered by the Council for their protection. Translation: control of Earth's entire space economy, handed to outsiders, indefinitely. Dressed up as guardianship, Elena sat with that knowledge for 6 days before she told anyone else. When she finally briefed Earth's unified council, the room went silent, in a way that had nothing to do with shock and everything to do with fury. General Amara Okafor, the delegation's military liaison, was the first to speak. "So we've spent 3 years proving ourselves to people who never intended to let us pass." "Yes," Elena said. "Then why are we still going to that vote next week?" Elena's answer surprised them all. "Because I want them to say it to our faces. I want it on record, in front of every species in that chamber, that they laughed." The day of the final ranking vote, The Grand Council hall was packed. Word had spread a Euro quietly, the way it always does a Euros, that the human delegation's numbers had come in catastrophically low. Lower than the Kryvex, a species barely out of their industrial age. Lower than the Ashtu colonies, who had only just developed interstellar travel 11 years prior. The council's presiding elder, a towering Olkari named Threx Amun, read the final score aloud with barely concealed amusement. Species Viability Index, Terran Assessment, 31.4. Provisional status is hereby extended for an additional standard decade, pending further evaluation. A decade. 10 more years under a system built to keep Earth-dependent Euros and vulnerable. That was when Elena stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue the numbers. Didn't cite the leaked memos. Didn't accuse anyone of anything. She simply said the words that would echo through every species' historical archives for years afterward. Humanity withdraws its application for permanent council membership, effective immediately. The laughter started almost instantly a Euros, first from the Vakaru delegation, then spreading like fire through dry grass. Someone shouted something about humans, finally understanding their place. Someone else called it the tantrum of a child who cannot win the game. Elena let them laugh. She waited until the noise began to fade on its own, before she added the line that no one in that chamber would understand until it was far, far too late. You'll want to keep our comm frequency open. You're going to need it sooner than you think. Then she turned, and the entire human delegation walked out together. The council assumed it was theater, a wounded species making a dramatic, meaningless exit before slinking back within the month, desperate to renegotiate. Ambassador Relkazavan certainly assumed that, right up until the moment 3 weeks later when council long-range sensors detected something that made every alarm in the tracking station scream at once. Every human vessel a Euros, every trade ship, every diplomatic shuttle, every scientific outpost, had gone dark simultaneously and begun withdrawing from council-administered space. Not fleeing, not panicking. Coordinated, disciplined, and precise, like a body pulling back a hand it had decided not to offer anymore. And then Earth closed its borders, not with weapons, with silence. Every comm channel humanity had shared with the council went quiet at once. No threats, no demands, no further contact of any kind. For 6 months, nothing happened, and the council told itself this was proof of human weakness. Euros, a species too fragile to survive isolation, soon to come crawling back. Then the Kryvex uprising began. The Kryvex, ranked even lower than humanity on the index, had spent years under council administration of their shipping lanes. When their homeworld's automated defense grid, a Euro, built and maintained entirely by council contractors, a Euro, suffered a catastrophic failure during an unrelated regional conflict, the Kryvex found themselves defenseless. And the council, bound by bureaucracy and old rivalries, took 4 months to even convene an emergency session. Humanity did not take 4 months. Humanity took 4 days. A single unmarked convoy of Earth vessels appeared in Kryvex space, rebuilt their defense grid from the ground up, trained their engineers, and left without asking for a single trade concession, a single vote of gratitude, or a single mention in any historical record. The Kryvex ambassador told the story anyway, a Euro, in the Grand Council hall, in front of everyone. That was the moment Rel finally understood what Elena Voss had meant. Humanity hadn't left because they were weak. They had left because they had realized something the council never wanted them to see. Membership had never been the source of their strength. It had only ever been a leash. 2 years later, humanity signed its first true alliance, a Euro, not with the council but with 11 independent species who had quietly reached out after watching what Earth had done for the Kryvex. No index, no hierarchy, no administered lanes, just mutual defense, mutual trade, and mutual respect, negotiated as equals from the very first conversation. The Galactic Council, watching its most promising trade routes and its most capable engineers slip steadily into humanity's growing alliance instead, finally sent a formal request for renewed talks. Elena Voss read the message twice, then set it down without replying. Some doors, once you finally understand why they were built the way they were, are better left closed, a Euros, and some tables are better left empty, because the greatest respect a people can earn is never the kind that is granted to them from above. It is the kind they walk away and build for themselves.